this question either, but I would center in myself personally on the child. You lost your child. How old was your child when you lost him? 12 years old. Did you love your child? Yes, I love my child. Was your child a nice boy? Yes. Was he involved in Little League Baseball? Yes. Did you get to go to the games? Yes. And just keep on all that thrust, letting her tell about her boy and how wonderful her boy was. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought of taking a moment and thanking God for allowing you to have that wonderful child for 12 years? A lot of people have never had a child like that for 12 years. And you were able to have that child for 12 years of your life, that unique, wonderful, wonderful child. Have you ever thanked God for that? You know, now certainly your child died, but you know, my grandfather died. I liked him. You know, my brother died. I've had lots of people die. Death happens to all of us. As a matter of fact, you're even going to die. The only issue is when. And you're upset with God because your child died sooner than you would have liked him to. You'd have liked him to live longer. But in actuality, you got the privilege of an experience with that child that no one else got. No one else ever will have. And God blessed you with that experience. And for some reason, that child has parted from you, your presence. But we don't necessarily want to blame it on God. I mean, after all, we all die. The seed of death because of, I guess if we had to blame it on somebody, we'd have to blame it on sin, wouldn't we? Because it's sin that causes death. So I think maybe you're shaking your finger at the wrong person. Are you involved in sin in your own life? You see? Because if you're involved in your sin in your own life, you're caressing the very one that's responsible for taking your son. I think you ought to lighten up on God. You know, I think you ought to lighten up on God. God did something wonderful for you. Sin did something horrible for you. You see how that is an approach that maybe could be used?
I was very impressed.
Pardon me?
I was very impressed.
Go ahead.
Aside from that, it's only, or in conjunction with what you were saying, it's still only her physical son that doesn't exist in this realm anymore. In spirit, obviously, she's still carrying him, so he still exists on some level, even in this realm, where she's worried about not having him physically, which again is a gift.
Yeah, and that again, you know, you could put that on top of the point that I made. She's never going to be she's never going to be away from her son. She always has that memory of that wonderful gift God gave her. You see? And so, so in other words, we approach it this way. Oftentimes the tendency is to approach it by either telling lies or banging people with theology. And you've got to break these things down to real situations with real people to get into real hearts and real lives to turn these situations around. And so what I'm simply saying is oftentimes these situations come up, and rather than to open your mouth, you might think about these questions. Maybe for hours, days, weeks, months, until you work this out in your mind. How would I respond to a person like this? I've met people like that. I've met people angry with God because they've lost a loved one. And so that bothers me. So I had to take the time to think about what could I say to this person that might be complimentary to the gospel, but yet also comfort them. And that's one example I just gave, and I think that people could come up with others. Go ahead.
I don't know how you're going to top that tonight.
Go ahead.
I had a lady, it was her cat.
Her cat.
God took her cat, and man, it was a big stumbling block for her. And I had another guy where his dad molested him. That was a real big
let's
stumbling
not talk
block.
about the molesting, but let's address this. We've got some very hardcore people in the world today. I mean, these people are rough and tough and hard. Their foreheads are like 8 inches of lead, and there's no way they're going to buy any animals getting to heaven. But there's other people with tender hearts and pure in their hearts and their lives, and they believe animals are going to get to heaven. And so we have this problem. Do we have this problem in the world today? I'm just joking a little bit because that was exactly the subject
It's
that
not
came
that
up
thick. It's not that
before the Bible study.
It's not that thick.
I'm just teasing you a little bit. Okay. So, and then we have, it went on to say, which you have seen, and things which are, and things which shall take place after these things. Well, let's take a look at that verse. It's in 19. Therefore, write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after these things. After what things?
The things he's going to show them.
I can't hear you.
The things he's going to show him in the churches.
Okay. Anybody? After what things? And I think Diane got it, myself personally. Of course, somebody else may have some other spin on it, but when it says the things which write, the things which you have seen, the things which are, and the things will take place after these things. After what things? And who's he talking to? Who's this book addressed to?
John.
Pardon me? Who's the book addressed to? Christians. Okay. So the book of Revelation is addressed to Christians. After these things, you know. And so after what things? I think, now some people are going to freak out a little bit at this because of their theology and that, and maybe this is a little biased, but for me, I think contextually, it's saying after these things of the church. We're going into the 7 churches. We're done with the 7 churches. Write these things that are going to take place after these things, after the church. So I think this is a verse that could be used to point out that the church's days are numbered. There's going to come a point to where there's an after the church, and that's what he's leading into. That's just what I'm going with. You may buy it, you may not buy it, but it means after these things means something, and I think it's after these things that he's talking about right now, which is the church, and which is he is going to be talking about, which is the 7 churches, and after these things, you see, and that's how I take it. But nonetheless, I think that might be a little thin, but that's all right too. I'm just saying that's just one point of many points that could be made. That one might be a little thin, but that's the way I take it. And so then, now we come to verse 20, and it says this: As for the mystery of the 7 stars which you have saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands, the 7 stars are the angels, and the 7 churches, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Well, we've already went over that. So we've got the stars, which are the angels of the churches, and then we've got the lampstands, which are the churches, and we've covered that. And that brings us to the conclusion of chapter 1. And so now we're moving into chapter 4. Excuse me, chapter 2. That concludes chapter 1, and now we're moving into chapter 2 of the book of Revelation. And so I think that I'd like to bring out a couple things, because here we're starting into the churches. So this, somebody could say, was an introduction in chapter 1. It's a pretty heavy introduction. But and now we're getting into dealing with 7 different churches. The presupposition of John in writing the book of Revelation And he says this, he says in 19, he says, therefore write the things which you have seen. The presupposition of that is that people are studying their Bibles. Otherwise, what we're doing here is we're spinning our wheels. In other words, if we're living in a society that puts little value on studying the Bible, little value on the preaching of the gospel, then that would be like spinning the wheels. The intent to take the time to write these things out was to people that were not spinning their wheels, that people that actually did, the lifeblood of their existence was studying God's message to them, was studying the Bible, was involved in the Scriptures.